Welcome to the Hoops Royalty Podcast. I'm King Jimison alongside Karna Venkatraj. And for those watching on YouTube, if we look tired, it's because we just endured a slog of a basketball game. The Grizzlies lose Game 3 to the Lakers, 111-101. Grizzlies trailed by 26 after the first quarter, fought back to within as close as 9 in the second half, thanks to 45 points from Ja Morant. But in the end, they could never fully close the gap. And I've got a royal decree coming for you, Karner.
I'm ready.
That royal decree is Dillon Brooks lost this basketball game for the Memphis Grizzlies. Not just with his play on the floor and with the stupid flagrant foul which got him ejected, but also for his pregame comments that whatever impact they had on LeBron, they clearly had an impact on the Lakers as a whole. This is a team that came out with incredible energy in the first quarter, and it was a tidal wave that just rolled over the Grizzlies and had them completely out of sorts. And if you take away that first quarter, the Grizzlies won by 16 in quarters 2 through 4, but it doesn't matter because of this massive hole you dug yourself in. Are you giving this royal decree your stamp of approval?
I am not giving it my stamp of approval, and I'll talk about why. I think when you have such a differential in that first quarter, you can definitely point some of the blame at Dillon Brooks, but a lot of that blame has to be laid at Taylor Jenkins' feet. You have a lot of times where the three playmakers are not on the floor at one time, Dez, Jaren, and Ja, and you are struggling to really find any offensive rhythm. And at that point, if Dillon Brooks feels like he needs to take over, that's another problem that we should lay at Taylor Jenkins' feet. You have to find a combination of players that can either score while Jaren's in foul trouble, which has been a problem all year long, or you have to find some other route where Dillon Brooks isn't the person controlling the game. You know Dillon Brooks. He's a known quantity. So why are we still giving the ball in isolation? Why are we still counting on Dillon Brooks to heave shots? As far as that foul goes, you cannot what happened was that the reffing let the pregame comments get in the way of what actually happened on the floor there. A flagrant 2 for that is crazy. And we got a comment on one of our tweets that James Harden got booked for the same thing. That was dumb too. Honestly, that was dumb too.
Oh, that was worse. That was a terrible ejection.
Yeah, so I think it was a terrible ejection. I still think Dillon Brooks has a ton of value. I don't think he alone lost us the game. He's a significant factor. But Taylor Jenkins has to mitigate that factor through coaching. I think that first quarter should be a shock to the system for the coaching staff, and they got to come back better in Game 4.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Exactly.
That can be a terrible ejection, which it was. That was not warranting of a flagrant 2. But it also can be an absolutely boneheaded play.
Oh, absolutely.
That was so stupid. First of all, it's the first possession of the second half. You're trying to pick up LeBron full court. Okay, fine. That's what Dillon Brooks does, but you don't need to be reaching in the first place there.
And that was too.
And we can absolutely debate whether he was making a play on the ball, but whatever it was, he intended to make some kind of contact with LeBron that he shouldn't have, and he has to know that the refs are going to be looking for that. Yeah. After everything he said, yes, the refs shouldn't let his pregame comments affect how they officiate the game, but they're going to. So a dumb play, but much dumber was his 3 of 13 shooting performance and 1 of 5 from 3. And this is where I will agree with you. Taylor Jenkins does take some of the blame for this because you've had Dillon Brooks on your team as long as you've been the coach here. At a certain point, you've got to rein him in. And there's going to be games where he's hitting and you say keep shooting. But in a first quarter, he does not need to be hoisting all of these threes that – yes, they're open, but you can get a better shot than a Dillon Brooks open 3. And that just fired up the crowd with every brick.
Yeah, and I think every time he missed a shot, the Lakers gained confidence.
Yep.
Obviously they were looking for him on the court. These guys are incredibly prideful. They're a part of one of the greatest organizations in sports. They were looking to come for Dillon Brooks. And as soon as he started missing – and the playmakers were not on the floor, and he felt like it was compounded by the fact that he felt the need to try to score, to make something happen when some of these star players were not on the floor because of whatever it may be, foul trouble. Taylor Jenkins' what can only be described as a lineup circus in that first quarter. Whatever it may be, you are inadvertently putting the game in Dylan Brooks' hands. You know that what kind of player he has, or player he is, and what type of mentality he has. And when those guys aren't on the floor, he thinks he's prime Kobe, and he's going to take shots that he probably shouldn't. And he did that tonight. But I think to say that that's all Dylan Brooks' fault is kind of not allowing as much agency as a coaching staff should have on the effect of that first quarter. They should be looking at the first quarter and really, solving some issues that they had.
You got to look at how can we come out that flat? How can we come out with so little response? The Lakers got off to a good start defensively, and were making it tough on you. But then it seemed like the Grizzlies just let it get to their head that they were bricking all these open shots, and then they stopped trying to go inside, and they were turning the ball over, and were out of sorts in every single way that you could possibly be offensively. That absolutely has to do with the coaching. Taylor Jenkins' in-game adjustments are sometimes not the best. I do think his between-games adjustments in playoff series have been very good. We saw Game 1 to Game 2, the Grizzlies' defense improved tremendously. They did a much better job holding Anthony Davis down. They did a much better job of not letting the role players kill them. I expect a similar response here. The ball was back in the Lakers' court after the Game 2 loss to make adjustments and respond to the energy and physicality that the Grizzlies brought in Game 2. Credit to them. They made those adjustments. The Grizzlies had to be more ready for that, though, too. Yeah. You knew the Lakers were going to come out trying to punch you in the mouth in the first quarter. You can't let that happen.
And this is something I'll say. I think the in-game adjustments from Taylor Jenkins today were good, right? But if you go down 26 in the first quarter, you can in-game adjust all you want, but the failure's already been made before the game started, which is what you mentioned, right? So I have a quick question for you, King. As we kind of look at the coaching staffs, the difference in these coaching staffs, do you think for the rest of the way through, the Lakers have the mental edge in the coaching staff, or would you say Taylor Jenkins can still pull the right levers and get these guys going for Game 4, Game 5, Game 6?
It's so interesting because I think if you talk to Lakers fans, they would say that Darvin Ham is one of the biggest liabilities to their team.
Yeah.
I think if you talk to Grizzlies fans, they would tell you that Taylor Jenkins is one of the biggest liabilities to the team. I'm a Taylor Jenkins believer. I think he's a great coach. I think that the improvement that they've shown every year since he's been there, the chemistry he's built with Ja and with the rest of this team, those are invaluable things. I think he has the chance to be the coach of the franchise. But you just can't come out with these flat first quarter performances like that. So I don't know. I think the coaching battle is actually one of the more interesting tipping points for this series because they're both inexperienced coaching staffs, relatively speaking. They've both shown some really troubling, particularly first quarters. The Game 2 first quarter was horrible for the Lakers. Game 3 first quarter for the Grizzlies was worse. And yet they've also shown the ability to adjust from those failures. So I don't know. Who has the next punch, I think, is ultimately going to come down to whose stars are ready to come up and play these last 4 games. Anthony Davis showed up in a big way tonight. LeBron really didn't. John Morant showed up in a big way tonight. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson really didn't. You need at least 2 of those guys for the Grizzlies, 2 of your big 3 to get going.
Maybe just one final comment on the coaching staffs here. I think this is one place that the Lakers have the edge in, and it has nothing to do with anyone that doesn't wear a jersey, because I think LeBron and Anthony Davis are, floor generals that can execute a game plan, but also add kind of their own spin to that game plan. LeBron has proved himself to be a generational talent on and off the floor when it comes to understanding the game and executing like a game plan that he has come up with in a lot of ways, or Darvin Ham has come up with in a lot of ways. So I think the edge for coaching staff and execution of a game plan beforehand might be the Lakers, but I think the Grizzlies play with a speed and a creativity that maybe the Lakers don't. So I'm excited to see that play out on the floor.
Let me ask you this, Carter, before we move completely on from coaching and just from general team intelligence. A lot of national media have spoken to the fact that the Grizzlies' inexperience, their brashness, their trash talk is something that was going to come back and bite them in the playoffs. Do you think this first quarter was a result, and this Game 3 defeat was a result of the Grizzlies' youth, inexperience, brashness,
No,
etc.?
and this, yes and no, right? But this is why I didn't stamp the royal decree, right? Like, I don't think it has to do with anything brashness or what Dylan Brooks might say in an interview. I think it had to do with the fact that a lot of our stars were not on the floor. They didn't find a rhythm. Like I said in a mid-game reaction, the halftime reaction, I've seen more team chemistry at an Esporta pickup game than I did for the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. So I think, that some of that's the coaching, some of that's youth. But I think that doesn't put us out of the series. That youth is going to help us as the series wears on. And I think in a Game 4 with short rest, that youth can help us. I love the brashness. I think it kind of hides the fact that the Grizzlies also have very smart players. Desmond Bane is an incredibly smart player. Tyus Jones had a terrible night. Smart player, though.
Yeah.
Even Ja. Yeah, smart player, can make the right play when he needs to. So the brashness, is kind of that big guy who you think is like a dumb jock, but, he can get it done in the classroom too. So maybe I'm talking about myself. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that, I think that, the Grizzlies can play smart. They just didn't tonight.
It's definitely an asset to them.
Yeah.
The Grizzlies' youth, energy, enthusiasm, and yes, when that crosses the line to the trash-talking bravado, that's what makes them who they are.
Yeah.
So they can't back down from that now. I think that the Grizzlies' youth cost them, though, in this first quarter, in the sense that they did not have, either between the coaching staff or the players on the floor, the ability to just say, calm down, we're okay, we've been here before, we just can't let this totally bury us, because this was a situation where a 35-9 margin in the first quarter buried the Grizzlies. They played well after that point.
Yeah.
I mean, they scored 92 points in the next three quarters. That's solid. They held the Lakers down for the most part. An 18-point second quarter, 23-point fourth quarter for the Grizzlies, or for the Lakers, excuse me. So the Grizzlies' defense played well. Everything went pretty well after the first quarter. You have to be able to take those bad stretches and not let them absolutely kill you. Yeah. One of the keys to the game on Bally Sports, which we were watching, Pete and Brevin, love that Bally Sports coverage. One of the keys to the game they had was wobble, don't fall. The Grizzlies fell tonight. They weren't able to take that punch and get right back up. That first blow by the Lakers was all it took. And as much as the Grizzlies tried to make it a game, they never really could. But let's talk a little bit about Ja Morant. Returns. He's now 0 for 2 in this series, but in this game he has 45 points, 13 assists, 9 rebounds. Carter, how much are those just empty counting stats, or how much is he really helping the Grizzlies on the floor?
I mean, it's a mixed bag. There are encouraging sides. 6 for 10 from 3-point. I don't care if it's overtime, we're down 50, or it's overtime. You want to see that shot, that percentage come from Ja Morant. These guys the Lakers did not respect the 3-point game from Ja Morant, and he made them pay, and that's really good. That being said, I think a lot of this is counting stats. I think a lot of it comes in the fourth quarter, which is good. I mean, it's good in a sense that, this isn't a historic playoff performance by any means, but it's good that Ja's finding a rhythm. Mm-hmm. He's hitting shots. That floater needs to fall because that opens the game up for him as well. Do I think this is like a historic Grizzlies performance and it was a valiant effort in a losing battle? No, I don't. I think he had a good game, but by the time he gets to 30 points, the game was kind of done and dusted, and he was the only one running on the court. So, I mean, I think that's evidenced too by his +3, ±. So, do I think Ja Morant had a good game? Yes. Do I think he had a meaningfully great game? No, I don't think that.
He had a stretch in the fourth quarter where he scored 22 straight points for the Grizzlies. I think that says as much about the other guys as it does about Ja Morant. Exactly. Now, Ja was awesome in this game. I do think he was by far the Grizzlies' best player. He was a +3, so he was actually, winning in his 41 minutes. I think that says a lot that in a game you lost by 10, Ja was +3. By the way, only other person in the positives for ± was Luke Kennard, who didn't hit a single 3 and only attempted one. So plus minus is a misleading stat, but for Ja, I think it is telling the correct story here. He was awesome. He gave the Grizzlies a shot. He gave them juice in the fourth quarter. And people forget just how competitive this guy is because they've let his off-the-court actions decide or dictate that, okay, he doesn't really care that much. Ja Morant cares so much. He plays as hard as anybody. He has Russell Westbrook-type energy out there. And the Grizzlies needed that to just make this a competitive game. Yeah. If he's found something in this series, the Grizzlies will win. Okay. If Ja Morant becomes the best player in this series, the Grizzlies will win. We've seen him in multiple games against the Lakers this season get really hot, getting downhill. Finally, the Grizzlies got out in transition in this game. If that's something they're building on in Game 4 and they don't fall behind by 29, then they're going to have a great shot to tie this up.
Yeah, so I think to kind of add on to that, though, one thing we saw from guys like Dez, Luke, some of the role players that we were expecting points from, was that it just wasn't there this game. I think that is kind of the risk that you run with a player like Ja. He's ball dominant. He's going to need the ball to score, despite that incredible shooting performance he had tonight, which I hope he can replicate throughout the series. But I just want to throw something at you right now. In the last game, which was a winning effort for the Lakers, Xavier Tillman, which, granted, that was maybe an anomaly, scored the most points and had about 21% of the total points, right? Tonight, Ja had 44% with 45 points. Do you think that that is a troubling sign that Ja Morant's kind of outshined everyone else in this kind of massive losing effort for the Grizzlies? Or do you think it's a sign that Ja Morant can find rhythm, but he just needs to start getting other people involved?
I don't, because of when his points were coming.
Yeah.
Ja had, I believe, 21 entering the fourth quarter, and then just absolutely went ballistic in the fourth quarter when nobody else was really scoring. And his field goal attempts aren't like crazy high. 26 is a big number, but when you're going 26 shots for 45 points is actually pretty remarkable efficiency. He was 13 of 14 from the line as well. So I don't think he's really taking away from anybody else with this performance. What's concerning to me is the other guy's not playing well on the road. It is no secret that the Grizzlies were a bad road team this season, well below 500. And the hope was in the playoffs, maybe they find something new. Maybe they're actually able to get a few wins on the road. They're going to have home court advantage at least for the first two series. So they only have to get one or two here or there. It's going to be hard to do when you're getting nothing from your bench, 12 points total from your bench, when Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane combined for 31 points, when you really need one of them to be hitting that kind of number. I don't think that's on Ja Morant. Would I have liked to see them get Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman more involved offensively? Absolutely. Xavier Tillman attempted only 5 shots tonight. That's not enough. Definitely wasn't enough for him to get his over 9.5 prop. Jaren Jackson Jr. attempted 12 shots, and I just felt like was not involved enough in the offense in the first half. Ja takes some of the blame for that, but not most of it. He needed to be the offensive engine tonight because nobody else could.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation. When you have Ja, is he the offensive engine that takes away from other people? And that's why we kind of see some of these players shrink in big moments. Because Jaren Jackson Jr. disappeared. And even though the counting stats are very similar, one, the plus-minus doesn't point to Jaren Jackson's defensive efficiency, but also he just didn't hit big shots in big moments. In the ISO game, he looked lost. He got stripped multiple times.
6 turnovers.
So, like, foul trouble. I think we can both agree that something changes when Ja's on the court. I think maybe you believe that it's good. I also believe Ja's obviously a net positive. He's the best player on that team by a lot right now, especially. The question I think is when Ja's on the floor, and this is really a question for Taylor Jenkins. When Ja's on the floor, is he making the other players around him better in a way that tonight it was an anomaly and they all shrunk in the moment and Ja was the only one who showed up? Or is there something more systemic happening when Ja's on the floor? other players have to shrink because he's a ball-dominant player.
It's a fair debate.
Yeah.
The starting point to me actually should be his defense, which has improved this season, but is still far below league average. But I just don't think you can look at a 45-point, 13 assist, 3 turnover performance on efficient shooting, 50% from the field, 60% from 3, over 90 from free throw, and say that Ja was anything less than incredible tonight, and he just didn't get any help. So my question to you is, did they waste this Ja Morant game? Is this a sign that the Grizzlies have no shot in this series? Or what is the key to getting back into
this should be
it?
An encouraging sign for the Taylor Jenkins because he's finding his rhythm. You saw him in game 1. He looked out of sorts.
Yeah.
And I think in game 3 today, he found a rhythm and a gear that he had not found for a little while. And it felt, I'm sure he's in that locker room, even though he may not be smiling because he's a super competitive guy, he's feeling a gear change in his head.
Yeah.
And that should be an encouraging sign for Taylor Jenkins walking into game 4.
Yeah.
If I'm walking to game 4 as a coaching staff and I'm a Grizzlies player, my head is held high.
Yeah.
Like, even though you got a historically bad first quarter, you beat the Lakers in the next 3 quarters in the Staples Center or the Crypto.com arena, whatever it's called. So I think that the conversation now becomes, in a lot of sense, moves away from Ja. He found his rhythm. He's ready to play in the next game. I think he's going to be good.
Yeah. And if you need him in the next game to be 30 points, 15 assists, I think he's got that. Or even 25 points. Like, he's ready to spread the ball around if other people are hitting
Interesting.
shots.
So, are you willing to put a little action on that? Or
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
But I don't want to bet on Ja Morant assists until I can see that the people he's passing to are actually hitting shots.
That's actually fair. So, that betting content for me and King will be coming soon.
It'll be coming out.
But one thing I wanted to focus on was kind of extending that question away from Ja, because I think he's ready. I think we know he's ready. 45 points, like you said, he had a great performance today, a good performance today. All-time great, needs to be a win behind that. Mm-hmm. And I think this comes with talking about our next guy, Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah.
Foul trouble today, -5, 13 points. I mean, he's only 5 points away from 18, 6 turnovers. What does he need to get going away from the FedEx Forum?
This was the Jaren disappearing act that became an all too frequent sight in last year's playoffs. I thought we were through this. I thought that was over after this all-NBA stretch that he's been on since the All-Star break. I'm going to chalk it up to a one-game thing where the Lakers were the more physical team. I mean, Anthony Davis had a horrible performance in Game 2, in which the Grizzlies were the more physical team. In this one, Anthony Davis comes out and has 31 points, 17 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Honestly, with Jaren, a concern I have is his defense. I feel like he's playing well on a possession-to-possession basis, but maybe in his interest to not pick up fouls, he's not the block panther right now. He has 0 blocks, 2 steals, and on the other hand, he's giving you 6 turnovers on offense. So I just don't know where that defensive ferocity is. Like, yes, we see the switchability. Yes, we see the help recovery. But the defensive counting stats that won him Depoy, that needs to show up. He needs to be that defensive force because right now, Anthony Davis has been by far the best defender in this series.
Yeah, and it hasn't been really close. In fact, points in the paint today, 42 for the Grizzlies, 58 for the Lakers. If you have that big defensive presence, that 58 goes down. And he just wasn't altering shots the way that he usually does in especially this season, in his Depoy season. So I think as the focus for Game 4 is saying, hey, throw out Game 3. You know, you got in foul trouble, and that's been kind of a mental / just gameplay block for you. Throw it away. Let's move on to the next one. Let's watch the film, and let's get aggressive on the boards and getting in people's face.
Yeah, he needs more than 5 rebounds as well. I mean, we know Jaren is not an elite rebounder despite his size, but when you are the only person who has the size to match up with Anthony Davis, your team needs you to be pulling down those boards. Two things I want to talk about before we wrap this up. First of all, something I like, something I don't like, and want to hear your thoughts on. When we look at the advanced stats in this game, the Grizzlies actually got a good amount of their shots at the rim, not nearly as many on mid-range, but the biggest problem is they couldn't hit any of their mid-range shots.
Oh my God.
On all mid-range attempts, the Grizzlies were 4 of 22 for 18%. Meanwhile, the Lakers, if you just look at long mid-range attempts, were 6 of 9, 80 or 67%. That would be in the 87th percentile in the NBA this season. So the Lakers were hitting those long mid-range shots you want them to take. The Grizzlies couldn't hit anything in between the rim and the three-point line.
Yeah.
Do you chalk that up to the Lakers' defense or bad shot selection? What's going on with that terrible mid-range?
Both bad shot selection, and they got him to make those bad shots and to take those bad shots, right? But the bigger thing is, this is why this is like an encouraging loss, which sounds like a paradox. But the reason I think this is like not the worst loss in the world is because they shot not. First of all, the Lakers did not shoot particularly well, aside from the long mid. But more than that is you had a historically bad shooting performance from the Grizzlies, and we only lost by 10.
Yeah,
at the Staples Center.
Yeah.
During that first quarter, it felt like the lid was on the rim. There was nothing that we could have done. Everyone was cold. Tyus Jones is 0 for 5 for the second game in a row. Some of this luck, it has to start shifting our way.
Yeah.
And I think once it does, I think we've had two really bad shooting performances that have resulted in losses. I think that will start to change. I think the Grizzlies will start to hit some of these shots and lower these point differentials and start taking leads. I want to transition and kind of extend your question, though, because one of our boys tonight had a tough game. He just looked lost out there. Luke Kennard.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about him before we wrap this up. What does he need to do to get ready? I think the shooting performance for everyone will turn around. But like Michael Scott or Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And
he missed a lot by that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Interestingly enough, he had the best plus-minus on the team at +6. I think that's just a product of being on the floor at the right times. Like, I don't really think Luke Kennard was a net positive for the Grizzlies in this game. But returning to his old home arena, obviously he was formerly a Los Angeles Clipper, he just looked like he was completely unwilling to shoot unless he was receiving a written invitation to do so. He was given enough space a couple times where he could have pulled up. And even if he misses that, you like it because he's starting to get himself into a rhythm. Luke Kennard cannot play 25 minutes and only have 1 3-point attempt. Yeah. That's not enough. And he's out there to space the floor. Well, he's not a floor spacer if he's not willing to shoot when he has a little bit of space. So I don't know. I don't know if it was just he got caught up in the Staples Center or the Crypto.com crowd, or if he got caught up in returning to his old home arena, but was not a Luke Kennard-like performance. I do think they're going to make it a concerted effort to get him 5 to 6 to 7 3-point attempts. Frankly, I think he should be taking 10 a game if they could draw up the offense to do so.
Here's my thing. He played scared tonight.
Yeah, he did.
He played scared tonight. He looked scared tonight, and you can't have a role player as important as Luke. One, play 25 minutes because he's not the defensive stalwart that he needs. The real source of value for him is making those 3-point shots.
Yeah.
And if he's not taking as many as he needs to, there needs to be a conversation with the coaching staff that says, how do we draw up a play, whether it's ATO or just a half-court offense, that we can go to get Luke Kennard a open or semi-open 3-point shot.
Yeah.
And then have a conversation with Luke Kennard that says, take the 3-point shot.
And if you don't, you're off the floor.
Yeah.
Because you can't be standing out there catching it and doing a little pump fake, taking 2 dribbles in. Yeah. Maybe he takes a mid-range pull-up, but more often he just kicks it back out, and you haven't generated anything there. So we love Luke, but he needs to get it going.
All right, King, let's wrap this up. Let me get 2 or 3 things you want to see in Game 4 and a prediction for Game 4.
Well, let's start with this. One thing I really liked from the Grizzlies today was their ability to get out in transition. They added 10.9 points per 100 possessions. That'd be in the 96th percentile in terms of the amount of points they were adding through transition. They got out and ran a lot, and they were effective in those fast break opportunities. Fast break defense still wasn't great, but you like that at least the Grizzlies made that adjustment. If you just have that same fast break ability and also pair it with competent half-court offense, which they played in the first 2 games but could not play tonight, then you're going to be scoring a lot of points. But my biggest question is, what is going to happen to Dillon Brooks? And if he is suspended, who's to start in his place? So the context for this, just a couple minutes ago, CBS Sports posted an article saying, because of Draymond Green's suspension and the precedent you set there by saying his past history led to the suspension, then they must follow the same procedure with Dillon Brooks. I disagree because it was a much less egregious act that Dillon committed. He has a much less storied history. Like maybe in recent years, Draymond and Dillon have been comparable, but there's not the longevity of incidents with him. But if he is suspended, who should start in his place? Do you go with Roddy, who was minus 19 today, worse on the team, or do you go with Kennard and just lean into playing super small?
Yeah, those are some good questions. Prediction for game 4?
I think the Grizzlies win. They're going to even this series up. This series feels like it's going 7.
Yeah,
it's just the ebb and flow is going to be a game by game thing, and the question will be, can the Grizzlies start with the energy they started with Game 2, start with the urgency they started with in Game 2, because basically the team who's gotten off to a better start in this series has won, and with the Grizzlies having that sense of urgency in Game 4, I think they're going to be the team that gets out to a fast start.
Yeah, I think for me, the 2 things I want to see is Jaren and Dez get off to Schneid and really stop the disappearing act, get the ball, be assertive when you have the ball. I would love to see Dez drive more. I would love to see Jaren in an ISO situation where he doesn't look lost. I think they've started to figure that out, but I'd love to see some of those looks coming into Game 4. Second thing is, let's start running. Start running because they're old, and I will stand by what Dillon Brooks said. LeBron James, he has his AARP card. He is an old man. Get him running. Get Anthony Davis running. Get out in transition and start pushing the ball, pushing the pace more. And then the final thing, let's get Luke Kennard going. More 3-point attempts. We talked about that. My prediction for Game 4, Grizzlies win. We get off the bad stretch of shooting that we're on, and we put together a solid game. We string together some possessions like we didn't do tonight, and we come out of Crypto.com Arena with a win.
This was just like Game 1, in which the Lakers knew they had to have it.
Yeah.
They had this absolute intensity that it's hard to muster game to game. And I was listening to a Lakers podcast, and they even said this is an inconsistent team. They can't bring the same level of energy every night. They are going to treat Game 4 as a must-win because they don't want to give home court back to the Grizzlies. But I think the Grizzlies will bring even more urgency.
Short rest, too.
Absolutely know that this is a game they have to win.
The short rest favors the Grizzlies, too.
Short rest favors the Grizzlies. I think they will push the pace again and hopefully even more effectively.
Everyone hit the cold tub. Y'all be all right.
Hit the cold tub.
Y'all be all right.
And if Dillon Brooks is out,
Xavier Tillman.
I think you start Kennard and you just try to piece together enough of defensive rotations.
Tillman on LeBron will be the matchup to watch there.
Yeah.
With that in mind, guys, this has been great. Hoops Royalty 901. We love y'all.
Only podcast true to the 901.
Yep. We're excited for Game 4. See y'all then.
Go Grizz.